And if we could have a moment of silence, and as I say each time, to ask for discernment and wisdom in this process. Okay. You have had the minutes sent to you and have had time to look through them. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is that moved by Mr. McDonald? Is there a second?
Second.
And seconded by Mr. Boyd. Are there any additions, corrections, deletions to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and the minutes have been approved. Under the chairman's report, I have one thing I wanted to mention to us. One of our members, Miss Avery, has been ill, and she's been in the hospital. She's expected to be just a short stay, expected to be home hopefully tonight, but let's just keep her in our prayers and just wish her a speedy recovery and to be back with us. I wanted to mention we've got an item later on in the agenda that has to do with the consultant and the consulting team getting in. But at this point, this just seems to be the only place that I'm getting to speak here. So I wanted to discuss the vision session, the overall session with this overall commission that we will need to have with the consultant when they first come in, for us to really establish the principles that will guide us, possibly our decision-making process, some of those things that will lay the foundation for the planning. And we'd like to have this done if all goes well, and again, you'll hear more about the contract later on, and get this done before the end of the holidays, because as Ms. Richards says, who is one of our commission members, we're running out of real estate, and our time is running short, so we'd like to get this done. One of the suggestions that I would like to make to us is that we do it on a regular Thursday. We've got, not many Thursdays left, but if we do it on a Thursday, I have actually spoken to them, and it would be an extended meeting. But it would be, say, from 4 to 8 or 4:30 to 8:30. We'd have sandwiches brought in and that kind of thing. So the most likely dates would be December the 15th or the 22nd. The 22nd is getting perilously close to Christmas, and I don't have any Christmas presents bought yet, but we can look at those now. We are going to be having the Charlotte-Mecklenburg meeting on the 12th, and I know that's asking a lot, but knowing that we may be off for 2 weeks, we really need to get this done before the holidays. I just wanted to mention that to you. Are there anybody have any comments about that? I know that not everybody is here on Thursdays, but and we want everybody to be here, but that may not be possible. Any comments from you? Does that mean
the 15th appears to be better? As you mentioned, because of the holiday season for a lot of people and travel.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. I agree with that, but just wanted to kind of run that by you.
Well,
Martavius?
Do we have to have it on a Thursday? I know that has been our regular schedule.
We
the holidays coming up.
Yeah,
so
we don't, Martavius. Mr. Jones, please. We don't have to. I really was trying to. I actually offered that because I felt like that for the most part people were blocking off their Thursdays rather than another day. So that was my thinking on that. We certainly could have it any day we wanted to, but it just feels like that most of us are counting on Thursdays as being able to do this. And since we don't have the contract ready this week, that would have to be pushed to next week, then the 15th would be the best. Well, why don't I kind of plan on that? You guys put that on your calendars and know that it would be an extended period, and hopefully you can be here for all of it. But I think we can hang in for 4 hours and get this important work done. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the bylaws. We saw those last week. We had 2 comments from Mr. McDonald last week, and we asked for any others. The executive committee has reviewed those comments, and Daniel Keel, would you offer a report and then a motion for that?
Sure. The executive committee met and discussed the 2 comments and made a couple of changes, and ultimately will move to approve these bylaws as the bylaws of the Transition Planning Commission. Just to note the 2 changes that the executive committee accepted. They're both on page 3. In Article 4, Section 2, the first sentence reads, the commission shall meet at least 2 times per calendar month. The executive committee met and changed that to 1 time per calendar month. So there will be, according to the bylaws, at least 1 meeting per calendar month. And then the other change was in Article 5, Section 3. It's about a quorum for a committee. The previous language said a quorum of any committee shall be 1 member. And we changed that to read, and anybody on the executive committee who has the exact language, please correct me if I'm stating it wrong. A quorum of any committee shall be 2 persons, at least one of whom shall be a member. So that means essentially you could have 2 people present, one of whom would have to be a member of this Transition Planning Commission. The other might be a staff person or other outside person who is serving on the committee, as is permitted in Section 2. So we've got to have 2 people there, one of whom shall be essentially one of us, and then anything adopted by that committee, even if it's just those 2 people, shall be binding. So those were the changes that the executive committee made, and the executive committee approved it, so I'll bring it as a motion to the full body.
Okay, and coming from the committee, that does not require a second, so is there discussion on those 2 changes? Mr. McDonald?
Yeah, I think if we're going to continue with Article 5, having just 1 member of this committee present to be a quorum for that committee, I think it's real important that when the committee reports out, it's very clear that that was a singular person making that decision.
I thank you for your comment, Mr. McDonald. I think that we certainly will do that. And just to give you some context for that decision, after you had made those suggestions last week, I spoke with Kelly Rain, who actually prepared these for us. And what she was, and her thinking there, which I shared with the executive committee, and we did change that to 2, is that particularly as we have consultants in and people out of town that might be in from town, some of our committees are small. They might be 2 or 3, 4, and so to have the commission and most of the other commissions that are not county commission have this rule so as not to waste that time. We did feel that 1 was too little, and so we made that requirement. But the other thing that we want to note, and what you're saying is well noted, and we'll take note of that and ask that happen in any reports, is that nothing would be approved in that committee anyway. It has to come here. So we definitely will make that note of who are attending the committee meetings, which would make it well known if there is 1, 2, or whatever. So, any other comments on this motion? All right, hearing none, all in favor of approving these bylaws as presented by the executive committee, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The ayes have it, so the bylaws have been approved. Okay. Next item. Thank you very much. All right, under new business, and I'm moving kind of quickly because we are expecting Commissioner Kevin Huffman from the State Department. I told him we had about 30 minutes worth of work to do, and we also have another individual, Mr. Ash Solar, that is from the Achievement Zone. So, Ms. Richards, could you take the next item of business, the MOU with Shelby County Education Foundation?
Yes, Madam Chairman. I circulated to the entire commission the final MOU with the Shelby County Education Foundation. As you all recall, we had to come up with a creative vehicle to allow for the funding of a agreement with an outside consultant to assist this commission with its work. The Shelby County Education Foundation has generously agreed at no cost to this commission to serve as the agent for the acceptance of the funds that are going to be raised through the private community and to be the holder of the funds. But they have also been equally clear. They have no interest in participating in the actual operation of the contract with the outside consultant, the approval of the invoices, or any part of that arrangement that has to be handled by this group, which is what we intended to do. So we've had a nice confluence of interests, and we appreciate their help. As structured, the MOU provides only for the collection of funds and disbursements in connection with the outside consultant to help us with the development of the plan. It is envisioned that should there be determined to be a need for other consultants, such as a communications or community outreach, we could amend this quite quickly once that entity was identified. But I think everyone knows we need to get on with this, and holding this up until that happens didn't make much sense. Attached to the MOU was also the conditions for the donations. That is a written document that allows and specifies for the donations to be put in a separate fund held by the Shelby County Education Foundation, and that those funds will be used for the compensating of the outside consultant in accordance with the direction of this commission. That document is key because while we've talked to a lot of folks, or I shouldn't say we, the people who are attempting to raise the money for this have talked to a lot of folks, they have not yet been able to get money in hand because they need a document of this type in order to collect the donations. I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has, or if there's discussion or anything, but otherwise...
Could you put that in the form of a motion first, Ms. Richards, and then we can properly discuss?
Well, with that being said, I would like to move the adoption of both the MOU and the conditions of donation.
All right, the motion has been made, and again, coming from the committee, no second is required. Is there any discussion? Yes, sir.
The document talks about the Boston Consulting Group. Is that decision final? Is that a decision that's been made?
Yes, it has been made. We discussed that at an earlier meeting after the from the ad hoc committee, and that was presented to this full commission, and that decision was made. Any other questions? Hearing no other questions, then all of in favor of approving the Memorandum of Understanding between the Shelby County Schools Education Foundation and the transition team, as well as the conditions for donation document, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The ayes have it, and this motion has been approved. I'd like to stop just at this moment and say that I think we really need to be very appreciative of the Shelby County Schools Education Foundation because this is, to hold this money and to disperse it is a responsibility, and so it shows their real desire to make this work, and it is, we are working as a commission, as I've said kind of laughingly before. I don't think anybody really realized all that would have to happen here, but to be able to enter into contracts, we had to find someone who would do that because we're not able to do that. So we're very appreciative to the Shelby County Schools Education Foundation. I also would like for all of you at any time that you can, and all of you have already stepped up to the plate and will continue to do that, but Chris Richards has put an unbelievable amount of time into this, and very high-level expertise we're getting here. And so it's just, it really is amazing, and you'll be able to see that even more as she begins. I mean, she has the next item also, and we don't have the actual contract with us tonight, so when you see that, you will realize the amount of work that she has done. So I am grateful. This county should be grateful that there are people of her caliber that are willing to take their time. So thank you, Ms. Richards, and you have the next item, too.
Thank you. We have been in detailed discussions with BCG towards getting a contract that can be presented to this group and approved and put in place so we can move forward with the actual work of this commission under their guidance and with their additional expertise. I would say, based on my conversations with them today, that we're about 80-85% of the way there. There are a few legal questions I need to address with the county attorney based on some of the changes they made to the documents that I put in front of them. And then they have now come back with a very detailed statement of work that is substantially lays out for a fixed engagement fee work that will be done not only for the original preparation of the plan, but to stay with us through the approval process with the state and the county school board, so that should there need to be revisions or other changes in that process, we will have the benefit of their assistance. My expectation at this point in time is that if we can get some answers, that we will have this ready to circulate no later than early next week, and with the goal being that it would be something that the chairman could put on the agenda for next week for this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Richard. And again, this has been a laborious process, and I want those of you who are on the commission that are not, you are all on committees, but to know that the committee chairs did have input into Ms. Richards in terms of what they saw happening in their committees, so that she could include that in the scope of work. This is something that has been participated in by many members of this commission at this point. So thank you again, and we look forward to having that next week. The next item on the agenda are, and first of all, let me recognize some people that are here with us that I always like to recognize, and I'm going to forget, not notice some people, and then you're going to look at me, and I'm going to should know your name, and I won't, so y'all forgive me ahead of time. But Chairman Orgel from the Shelby County School Board is with us tonight. Also, board members Betty Malott, Diane George, and Frida Williams. Are there any other board members with us? We have Mr. Atkin, from the superintendent of Shelby County Schools, and Dr. Cash is not with us tonight, but Dr. Hamer is with us, associate superintendent. Also, we have, maybe we've made a friend out of Dr. Tim Sutherland, because he's was with us last week as a presenter, and so he's with us again tonight. And of course, another individual who is really becoming a mainstay at our meetings is Mayor Sharon Goldsworthy. Mayor Goldsworthy, we're happy to have you with us again tonight. So, all right, let's have move to has the commissioner walked in anywhere, or have I missed him? Okay, then we got a little time. All right, committee reports. I want we have 3 reports on here listed, but for committee chairs, if any of you have pulled your committees together since the last time and want to just talk about it or tell us when you're going to, that's fine too. But if we could be brief, that would be helpful. So let's start with the Communications and Community Engagement Committee. That's Kenya Bradshaw and Jim Boyd are the co-chairs. Ms. Bradshaw's not here, but Mr. Boyd is.
Madam Chairman, the Communications Committee met once briefly, and products of our work have been distributed to the commissioners. The first is a single page, which was prepared by the staffs of Memphis City Schools and Shelby County Schools. And this is a fact sheet that will be present on their websites. Same information for both school systems, and is available to be shared with others. So we give that to you. And then the second is a PowerPoint presentation on the Transition Planning Commission, a request that we have received often. And Dr. Smerelli prepared this for us, and I'll ask him to share just briefly with us the work that went into this.
This is essentially, thanks, Jim. This is essentially a document of the facts. It's not very exciting, but as a college professor type, I want to put things in a presentation form, unlike our legal expert across the table from me. So this is in a presentation form, and basically just the facts. Because the last thing we ever want to do in this process is disseminate incorrect information. So it's my hope that this presentation be a link on the Shelby County website. And basically, if you are asked to give a presentation, this could serve as a skeleton for that presentation. I'd be remiss not to say I put together this draft, and Barbara Prescott spent a lot of hours revising and making sure this presentation was correct. So I thank her for her involvement in this project. But this should be an item that if you're asked to speak at your church group or other groups, this should serve as a document. But it's also going to be a living document. So we're going to continue to modify it as we go. As new, exciting information comes available, we will continue to do that and continue to modify the PowerPoint presentation. So it was a labor of love, and I thank Dr. Prescott for all of her work in making it happen.
Madam Chairman, that concludes my report. Hope it was short enough.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd, and also Dr. Smerelli. And if you find typos, just quietly let us know. You know, they can be corrected very easily on PowerPoints. But it was amazing that Dr. Smerelli had the job of kind of putting together a fact sheet, and then the next thing we knew, he had a PowerPoint. So this is good, and it is something we've been wanting to have something that we could use. And again, this is a good start. Let me just add to this, because we mentioned this, you mentioned this last time, Mr. Boyd, us meeting with some of the news directors, and I would want to say that that I have been able to meet with 4 TV stations. Steve Schuler set those up, so I have met with news directors in Channel 5, Channel 3, Channel 13, and Channel 24, and just let them know, you know, what we're doing, that we consider all of the media, both print and electronic, as our partners in educating the community to what we're doing. That's not all that we will be going around to do, but it was just all we could get to in this last week. So thank you very much. All right, the Assessment Committee, Dr. Green.
Yeah, thank you. The Assessment Committee met Tuesday, and we had a very energizing meeting. First of all, we selected a recorder that took minutes, and will report those minutes on the website. We identified the roles and functions of the Assessment Committee and discussed current conditions in the 2-school district. We identified a series of action steps that the Assessment Committee will take, and we scheduled the next meeting for December the 14th at 11 o'clock a.m. in the Shelby County Central Office. The roles and functions that we determined that was appropriate for the committee was to build a comprehensive student data file, to provide information to the commission, to inform the work of the commission and the work of subcommittees, to develop a series of recommendations regarding the processes and the resources and services that would be forthcoming. The committee determined that its work is very student-centered.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Thank you very much for the report and for getting your committee together and getting that process started. All right, the last one listed here is the Logistics Committee. Mr. Holden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Logistics Committee met at the Shelby County School Board office just yesterday, and the majority of our members were there. We discussed a plan of action for our body of work, and basically logistics falls under the Category 9 of our commission work by state statute, which is other. But pretty much we have determined that it's all of the support services for the school district, and we've identified those support services into 6 categories: facilities, transportation, nutrition, information technology, safety, security, and purchasing. We assigned each member of our group, outside of our staff members, an area of one of those areas to collect data. And our 2 staff members, Mike Simpson and Atesh Haria, gave us school system contacts that would work with us, with the members, to provide the data that's needed to do our work. What we plan to do is to collect data about what service is being provided, then determine the various options that could move forward with the new school district, and provide budget line items for those new options. We have not set a timeline for that work, waiting on meeting with our consultant to establish a plan of timelines, and also did not set a second meeting date, also waiting on a meeting with the consultant for that. But the minutes have also been sent to Ms. Brown for submission to the website. I would point out one error. That's my fault. I misspelled Mr. Jones' first name, and we'll need to correct that in the minutes, and I won't make that mistake again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. He doesn't have much work to do on that committee, does he? All of those different things. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for being diligent. All of you, thank you very much for being diligent about your taking the minutes and the attendance. As we were speaking before, it's important to know who was at these meetings. It's also important that you remember, if you have another meeting set up, that you must get that meeting to Ms. Brown, because these meetings have to be sunshined 48 hours ahead of time. So be sure. This is something that I know all of you are not used to doing. We don't have to do this and everything, but we do in this. And so just remember, if you set up another meeting, that she has to know about it so she can appropriately put that on the website. Now, does anyone else, Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Chair. Prescott. Mr. Pickler and I, we had just a conference after the board meeting on Tuesday, and we will be scheduling, I think we're going to work out a time as well as a specific location, that the Administrative Structure and Governance Committee will meet on the same day as the Charlotte-Mecklenburg panel, just maybe an hour, perhaps an hour and a half before that meeting. So that meeting will be scheduled, that committee meeting will be scheduled for December 20th.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Johnson, I know you've done a little work yourself there, so.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Educational Services Committee has met with both superintendents and asked for their input. We've asked for some other people's input. We're doing preliminary planning. Mrs. Brown will get our notification in due time. We propose a meeting on the 7th of December in room 214 in the Shelby County Board of Education's conference room at 4 p.m. We have had key staff persons identified on both sides. We chose to meet there because there are about 22 key items that we will be addressing, dealing with what's actually happening in schools. And we are meeting there so that we will not pull the staff's way out. They'll have an opportunity to provide information locally there. So
Good to have a school person doing that because you understand school people, don't you?
Absolutely.
Understand what they have to do. And Mr. Keel, Daniel Keel, is the co-chair with Dr. Johnson on that.
we work together. So
Yeah, okie doke. And I will have to say that I think that the only other committee that we have is the Personnel Committee, and our chairman has been quite busy on other things.
We'll set
But-
a meeting once we get through this consulting agreement.
But I have no doubt that as difficult as her area is, that it's going to be taken care of. I have gotten word that that our speaker is about 5 minutes away. And is it Solar? Is that how you pronounce? Is he in here? Ash. Well, I think their presentation is together. So let's just mention again the December 12th meeting, which is going to be at Christian Brothers University. Thank you, Dr. Smirelli, for allowing us to meet at your university. It's going to. I want to just say a few words about this particular panel. We will get to you, as a couple of you asked before, a case study prior to this so that you can look at it. But even though Charlotte Mecklenburg we're looking at them because they are a merged district, that has been so long ago that our focus, whereas some of our focus earlier when we looked at Chattanooga, Hamilton County, was how did they do it and what were the things that they should have thought of and what were the things and kind of that process-oriented conversation. But this is a district that has been merged for, since the 70s, I believe. So, when? 60. Nothing like having somebody in the audience that knows this. Thank you very much. So that's been quite a while. So we are having them as an example of a district that is not as large as ours, but similar in size, that is a merged district that has been quite successful in achieving excellence. In fact, they are a recent member of the Broad Foundation Award as an excellent district. So this is more of what can a district look like. Some years from now, we'll think about Mr. Hart's sign out there. He keeps talking about that sign 50 years from now. So that really is the focus of this particular panel discussion. And as you read the materials, when we get them to you, then we can think about questions in that way. Why don't we just take a quick break, because I think our speaker is just a few minutes off, and as soon as he gets here, we can hear the Commissioner of Education.
what do you teach?
Here, and we'll be presenting with the Commissioner and talking a little bit about the achievement zone. So, Commissioner, thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to kind of scoot this way, and you can do your presentation, and then we'll have questions after their presentation.
Okay, and we may have to scoot this way to get out of the way as well. But first of all, thank you so much for having me. And second of all, thanks to all of you for serving on this commission. I know that you all have put an extraordinary amount of time and energy into this, with the promise of putting even more time and energy into it. And we really do appreciate your service. I'm coming here tonight to talk a little bit about the State Department's plans broadly and how I see the Memphis, Shelby work fitting into some of those plans, and then to answer some of your questions. Now, I come here with the assumption that I am not going to have all of the answers to all of your questions, but I would love to answer the questions that I can and to take notes on everything else so that I can come back to you and present to you all in a more formal way. But I'm hopeful that this is actually the first of many interactions that we will have, because I view this entire process as an important iterative process. I don't believe that this should be a one-time fixed event where I come in and present, and then later on you present me with a plan, and then I send you back comments. And I think this is an opportunity for us to be engaged in an ongoing way and talking about our common interest in creating a system of schools that ensures the best possible outcomes for kids. I am incredibly optimistic about this work. I believe that we have a unique opportunity right now to ensure that at the end of all of this, we have a system of schools that is the best possible system for kids, that kids across this region are attending schools that are even better than the schools they have been attending, that we have set our children up for the future. I think it's an incredible opportunity for you all to recommend what things have been working that we should keep doing, what things have not been working that we should stop doing, how should we structure our work, how should we think about our work philosophically, and how can we approach everything that we're doing through the lens of what is best for kids. Not what's best for the systems that have previously existed, not what's best for politics or for optics, but what is best for kids. And I think there is an incredible opportunity. I'm excited about this commission. I'm excited about all of you and your energy and your work. And let me dive into talking a little bit about some of our work, and then we can finish with some questions. So when I talk about, can you scoot over just a teeny bit? Thanks. Actually, I'll stand up. This may actually be easier for me. So when I talk about where Tennessee is as a state right now, and I think about Tennessee's long-term role and what we're trying to accomplish, I think about education through the lens of competitiveness and how Tennessee's competitiveness is going to look in the future. Right now, only 21% of adults in Tennessee have a college degree. That's way lower than the national average and much lower than it needs to be, while most of the jobs of the future will require post-secondary education. And we don't have enough high school seniors across the state that are college ready. Beyond the fact that we know we need to have more kids who are college ready, we're not meeting our kids' aspirations. So when our kids take the ACT, they're asked, what do you want to do after high school? And while it's true that not every kid should get a four-year college degree, the reality is that most of our kids say that they want to get a four-year college degree. So our kids say they want to get a college degree, and then they take a test which shows that only 15% of them are college ready on all four subjects. Only 27% of them are college ready on math. So there is a huge gap between the aspirations of our kids and what we're delivering to them through our education system right now. We got our results back on NAEP several weeks ago. So the 2011 results came back on NAEP. These were taken in January and February, and the results were quite disappointing. In fourth grade math, Tennessee ranks 46th in the country. In eighth grade math, we're 45th in the country. Just in the Southeast, we're 8 out of 10 states. That is obviously not where we want to be and not where we think we should be. And there is a pervasive gap between different groups of students in Tennessee. Now, this is true nationally, but in Tennessee, the gap between students who are free and reduced price lunch students and non-free and reduced price lunch students, the gap between African American and white students on their proficiency levels is pervasive. And it's a huge gap that we see across all the tests that we administer. And if we are going to get better results in the state of Tennessee as a whole, we have to start by addressing the achievement gap that exists within the state. Rural schools tend to cluster in the bottom half of schools, so this is something that we're cognizant of in our strategic plan. And furthermore, we know that we could actually be doing better. So one of the things that people have said to me is I've said, we're 46th right now in math. We've got to be able to do a better job. People will say to me, well, the reason that we're 46th is because of the poverty. We've got a lot of poor kids, and that's why we're doing so poorly. But the reality is if you just look at kids who are on free and reduced price lunch across the country, we're still 43rd in math. So just looking at how we're doing educating similarly situated kids, the answer is not very well. And furthermore, poor kids in Tennessee are a full year behind poor kids in Kentucky, behind poor kids in North Carolina. And so when people want to say that it is poverty that is causing the results that we're getting in Tennessee, I would say, why is it that poor kids in Kentucky and poor kids in North Carolina are able to perform at a much higher level? I don't believe that it's because of the kids and the families, and therefore I have to believe that it's because we need to construct a stronger education system top to bottom. Within Tennessee, some schools are realizing significantly better results than other schools with the same population of kids. So if you look at all the schools in Tennessee that are 75% or more free and reduced price lunch, so all of the schools that serve predominantly high poverty kids, the top quartile of those schools actually outperform the state average. And the top 5% of those schools dramatically outperform the state average. And that tells me that right here in Tennessee, dozens and dozens of schools are doing a really excellent job in getting results with kids in poverty. And that gives me significant hope, because then I think it's harder for us to say that it's because of demographics, when we know that there are other schools in Tennessee that are actually getting great results. So that leads us to our strategic priorities. And we have laid out 4 strategic priorities that we think the state should be responsible for as we think about improving educational outcomes. We want to expand kids' access to effective teachers and leaders. And so when we think about that, we think about helping to recruit more great people into the profession and helping to build a leadership pipeline. We want to expand families' access to good schools. We want to make sure that no child is ever stuck in a failing school and that parents feel like they have choices among multiple high-quality options. We want to expand educators' access to resources and best practices. So we want to make sure that professional development becomes much stronger. We put a lot of money and energy into professional development in the state with mixed results, and we know we can do a better job. And we want to expand public access to information and data. We want to make data available much more rapidly and much more transparently, and we want to do a better job of communicating with all constituent groups across the state. Our belief is that's a core state function and one that we think we can do a better job of. So let me talk a little bit about the Planning Commission and about your work and about the merger that you all are working on and how I see some of that work fitting into the broader effort in the state of Tennessee. You all obviously know this as well as I do, but you are creating a comprehensive plan, presenting a transition plan to the Department of Education for review and comment, and presenting the transition plan to the Shelby County Board of Education. And on this piece, I would say, obviously within the legislation, you all are going to present me with a plan. I will review and make comment on it. I have limited statutory authority in terms of prescribing what happens within that plan. But I and my team really want to be a partner to you all. And we don't want this to just be a fixed point in time. We would love to come and present. We would love to give you data and information when it's helpful. We would love to help you access other districts and states that you think would be helpful. We would love to offer comment on ideas when you have them. I don't think this needs to be a fixed process where there's one moment in time when we respond to things. We would like to be a helpful partner. It's obviously your work, but this is the largest district in the state of Tennessee. This work is of the utmost importance to us. We want to be helpful to you. Actually, can you go back? So through the transition plan, the Planning Commission will shape whether we use this moment to its fullest potential. I believe that if at the end of all of this, all that we have done is affected a financial merger of two systems, I think this will be a missed opportunity. I think if we wind up with something that is simply structurally a larger school system but where the quality of education does not improve as a result of the steps that you all take, this will be a failed opportunity. I think this is a unique opportunity right now to reimagine what it means to provide an excellent education for every single kid in the region. One of the things that we care significantly about, and we're going to talk a little bit about now, is taking aggressive steps to turn around the lowest performing schools. We think there is a unique opportunity to, through district-driven work, create local innovation zones where schools are dramatically turning around their performance. We think that partnership with the Achievement School District could create more great schools that kids in the region will want to attend. And we also think that there is a chance through this merger to create the kind of central office with less bureaucracy and more orientation towards high performance that will be a better central office, something that parents will feel is more responsive to their needs. And I say that without any slight towards the current systems. I think as somebody who manages a system right now, when you come into a system, you inherit the system that you previously had. And that's a hard thing. You sort of work within the boundaries of the system that you have. I think this is a unique opportunity to create a new system where its core mission is serving parents and serving families and serving kids, and to do that from scratch, from the ground up. I'd like to talk a little bit about priority schools and the work of the Achievement School District. So we recently submitted our waiver to the U.S. Education Department for a waiver from No Child Left Behind. And one of the things that we're asking for is for relief from some of the rules under No Child Left Behind that we feel like are no longer helpful to the state of Tennessee. And this is a statewide effort. 10 other states have submitted waiver requests. We're waiting. Hopefully we'll hear by the end of the year. But I want to call your attention to a couple of particular things that I think are relevant and pertinent to your work. Within this waiver request, through the U.S. Education Department rules, we needed to identify the priority schools, which are the bottom 5% of schools in the state in proficiency and graduation rates, focus schools, the 10% of schools with the largest achievement gaps between different groups of students, and reward schools, which we defined through 5% of the highest performing schools in absolute results and 5% of the highest progress schools in terms of value added. So we needed to identify them, explain how we identified them, and talk about what we would propose to do with those groups of schools in order to get a waiver. One of the pieces that I think is relevant to all of you and to this community is the Achievement School District. As many of you know, through the First to the Top legislation in January 2010, and through the Race to the Top application, which every district in the state signed on to and was submitted, and ultimately won the competition, we created an Achievement School District. And the Achievement School District is designed to, through either charters or through direct management of schools, take in schools that have performed at a very low level for a long period of time and create schools that are higher performing where these lower performing schools once stood. Currently, there are 34 schools across the state that are ASD eligible. So right now, the Achievement School District is driven by the AYP rules under No Child Left Behind. A school that fails AYP starts down the path into the Achievement School District, and after failing AYP for a number of years, it eventually is ASD eligible. So right now, 34 schools are eligible, including 25 in Memphis. Now, because of the way AYP has been structured, and because we have essentially fallen off an AYP cliff, most schools in the state of Tennessee would fail AYP if No Child Left Behind is not changed. 80% of schools in the state would fail AYP because of the way rules are structured. Now, that wouldn't mean they would be immediately eligible for the Achievement School District, but they would start down the path. And to give you an example of how much this would expand the parameters of the Achievement School District, if we continued under the AYP system, by 2014 and 15, around 400 schools across the state would be ASD eligible, including more than 100 in Memphis. Now this, needless to say, is not what we want. It's not what we think the state role should be, and it far exceeds our capacity to effectively manage schools. So one of the things that we have proposed through the waiver process is that the 85 priority schools, the 85 schools that are in the bottom 5% of the state in absolute performance, should be ASD eligible. The draft list that we submitted, and it's a draft list because the final list will be created at the end of this school year, so this is the list as of this moment in time based on past results. 69 schools in Memphis would actually be eligible. Now, as Ash is going to talk about momentarily, that doesn't mean that these schools would all come into the Achievement School District. The Achievement School District needs to build its capacity slowly and gradually. And the reality is that most of the work, the vast majority of the work in managing the schools that are priority schools and ensuring that they turn around needs to be done by the local district, and I think presents an enormous opportunity for all of you. Every priority school under our waiver application will take one of four paths. It will either go into the Achievement School District, it will go into a district-run innovation zone created by the school district and approved by the Department of Education. It will adopt one of four school improvement grant turnaround models, and this is through federal rules. These turnaround models already exist under federal law. Or it will go into a school improvement planning process, which will ultimately result in either exiting the bottom 5% of schools or entry into one of these three things. And let me take a second to talk about this district-run innovation zone because I think this is really important. Through this work, the city of Memphis and Shelby County have the opportunity to create, in the merged school system, an innovation zone within the district. So a zone that would be a carve-out within the district for schools that are in the bottom 5% of performance, where you would be able to set up different criteria for those schools. You could, for instance, have longer school days. You could have different access to tutoring. You could have different curricula. What you propose is ultimately up to you. We are going to take the resources that we have for school improvement and turnaround and grant that money out in competitive grants to priority schools. So right now, we estimate that we will have in excess of $40 million to grant out in March to schools that are in the bottom 5% of the state in results. And we estimate that we're going to have an additional $40 million by next fall to grant out again to schools that are in the bottom 5% of the state in results. We are going to give that money out through a competitive grants process. And we are only going to give funds to the districts and the schools that propose the best, most innovative plans to turn around performance and advance student achievement. We are not simply going to take the money and give it out to schools to do the same thing that they've been doing that hasn't worked in schools that are in the bottom 5% of performance. It's an opportunity, I believe, for the Planning Commission, the Unified Board, the private sector, the philanthropic community to come together and imagine what an innovative zone would look like and imagine what turning around low-performing schools would look like and to come together with a plan and a proposal that then would be backed by financial resources to help lead to turnaround of schools. I think it's a unique moment in time and a unique opportunity, and I actually think it's incredibly well situated given your work and given the work of the Unified School Board, because it's a chance for everybody to work together and come together around one common vision and plan with the help of the community and the private sector. the Achievement School District is going to scale gradually over time. So while what we're proposing through our waiver would call for all priority schools to be eligible to go into the Achievement School District, the Achievement School District is going to scale gradually over time. First of all, we want the Achievement School District to build its own capacity to manage schools effectively. Second of all, some of the schools that are in the bottom 5% of the state are actually on an upward trajectory already. There are schools that are in the bottom 5% of performance that are starting to move forward. We do not want to take schools that are succeeding, that are starting to turn around, and take them into the Achievement School District. That doesn't make any sense. We as a state have no vested interest in managing a certain number of schools. All we want are good results for kids. That's it, plain and simple. And we view the Achievement School District as a potential lever. But to give you a sense of how this might play out over several years, we estimate that the Achievement School District might have 6 schools for the 2012 and 13 school year. It might have 18 schools by 2013-14. It might have 35 schools by 2014 and 15. And we believe that district innovation zones here in Shelby, also in Metro Nashville, in Hamilton County, and any place else that winds up in a priority school zone could have as many as a dozen schools this coming year, 24 the following, 30 the following. Again, this is just an estimate. Districts that propose different plans could lead to changes in what this looks like. Our end goal is that we want all of the schools across the state that are in the bottom 5% of results to have a concerted plan to actually improve their performance, whether it's through the Achievement School District, whether it's through district innovation zones, whether it's through district improvement plans with school improvement grants that we give out supporting that funding. That's what we want to happen over time. And I'm going to let Ash talk a little bit about how he thinks this might look in the context of some of our work.
Good evening. Apologies in advance for a somewhat complicated slide, but this is a little bit of a look under the hood into how the Achievement School District is thinking about approaching scaling. This is an example of a feeder pattern in Memphis City schools. What you see is 1 high school, 2 middle schools, and 5 elementary schools. This isn't a perfect feeder pattern, but it's the ballpark. And what I want to point out is the red schools are bottom 5% schools. So for this neighborhood, for this community, 7 of the 9 schools that children are eligible to go to are in the bottom 5% in the state. And so as the Achievement School District, the thing we're most committed to is discipline scaling. We do not want to compromise the quality of the expectations we have in our schools for the students we'll be serving. And so we want to make sure that we start slow, create proof points, and have a disciplined growth that does not compromise results in an effort to get to as many schools as possible as quickly as possible. That's not our end game. But feeder patterns is something that we're thinking about, right? I think if you look at turnaround nationally, there's a lot of places where people start at high schools and try and focus on high schools. But the reality is, if kids are entering 9th grade 3, 4, 5 grade levels below in terms of reading level, it's probably not the high school instruction that's the problem. And so we're trying to be really thoughtful about getting to root causes and getting to kids where we can systematically and sustainably improve the school opportunities provided to them. And so this is an example, again, 7 of the 9 schools in this feeder pattern, bottom 5% in the state. And as Commissioner Huffman stated, the state's 46th in the country, so it can be extrapolated that these are some schools that are really struggling on a national scale as well. And so as we think about growth, we think about how can we think about a high school and a middle school so that the real way we're turning around the high school is by getting to the 6th graders so that 3 years from now or 4 years from now, 9th graders are entering high school, ready for high school curriculum, and ready to become college and career ready. And the same thing with middle schools. As we think about turning around middle schools, can we get to the students sooner in the elementary schools so that they're entering 6th grade ready for middle school curriculum? I share this with you because the Achievement School District is really, really excited about the innovation zones. We see these as a tremendous opportunity to partner with districts and learn from and along with districts on how we best turn around schools to support as many kids as possible collaboratively as quickly as possible. And we think that there's an opportunity to work in collaboration around how do we attack feeder patterns in crisis together so that we're sharing it, so that we're taking on communities collaboratively and strategically, so that we're not going across the whole city taking on all the high schools without really getting into the middle schools and elementary schools that also need support and services. In terms of the vision and the mission, the vision, Tennessee Schools Transformed, proving the possible with the bottom 5%. The ASD is committed to creating proof points of what kids can and should be able to do when provided educational opportunities that they deserve. Our mission, and this is a little bit more data-driven, every school straight to the top, 10% better every year, and going from the bottom 5% of schools in Tennessee to the top 25% in 5 years. Now, we got under the numbers a little bit to figure out what's the right goal. We liked the sound of bottom 5% to top 5%. You get under the numbers, and that's a little bit ambitious. And we saw that it is achievable for a school in the bottom 5% to get to the top 25%. And looking at data in the last couple years, the highest performing schools in terms of annual progress are achieving double-digit growth. And that's the expectation we intend to set for the schools that we charter as well as the schools that we direct run. And again, we're absolutely thrilled to be collaborating with districts and innovation zones to learn best practices, to share best efforts, to make sure that it's not just any one school or type of school, but all schools that are trying to get to these results as quickly as possible for our kids.
So we got into this a little bit. Actually, a couple of things. So one, Chris Barbick, who's the superintendent of the Achievement School District, I hope you all will have a chance to have him in to present to you at some point as well. One of the things that Chris and Ash have been doing is they've been doing community meetings in all of the ASD eligible schools where they're currently working in co-management right now. So they do these community meetings where they have them at the school, parents are invited, teachers are invited, and they have a conversation about what the community would like to see in their school. And Chris actually is doing one of those tonight in Hamilton County, which is why he isn't there. But I think it's an important part of the process of figuring out what the Achievement School District should look like. And I think they've found the community meetings to be incredibly fruitful so far, and they've taken away a lot of really good ideas from parents about what they want to see a school look like for their children, which is really important, and that's what this is all about. This is a tremendous opportunity to convene an important public conversation about what it will take broadly to turn around low-performing schools, to bring parties together to design a local innovation zone, and to build lasting capacity in districts. Part of the innovation zone is to actually manage a group of schools that are not performing at a high level right now and do something different with them, with resources behind it. Part of it is to increase district capacity so that as schools come back from the Achievement School District, they come back into a district that has capacity to manage them really effectively. So I think that's an important piece of the innovation zone as well. But I am hoping that the Planning Commission, that the Unified Board, that the community will all come together in the ensuing months and think very critically about what does a long-term plan look like to actually create schools that serve all kids in the community at a very high level, regardless of what past performance has looked like. Is that the end? A couple of things before I turn it over to questions. One is that while this has been focused on the priority schools, because I think that is where there is actual constructive work that people could be engaged in over the coming months, it's also important to note that Memphis and Shelby both had a number of schools on the reward schools list. So Shelby County had a number of schools. Do you remember how many it was? 7 in Shelby and 14 in Memphis that were on the reward list, either because they were in the top 5% of the state in terms of performance, or because they were in the top 5% of the state in terms of speed of growth. And so that is very impressive. And one of the things that we want to do with reward schools broadly across the state is study them and figure out what they're doing well and figure out what their best practices are so that we can infuse some of those best practices in some of the lower performing schools. And I think in particular, the opportunity to pair up schools that are at the top and at the bottom of the performance curve with each other is a real opportunity across the state that we're looking at and something for you all to think about. But I do think it's important to remember that there are a great many schools that are either performing at a high level or that are improving at an incredibly fast rate. And one of our goals is to help figure out how to have more schools, regardless of what their starting point is, figure out how to accelerate their growth so that we can have ever more schools in the region that are on the reward list ultimately. So I'll stop there, Barbara, and would be glad to take some questions.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Huffman. And I would like the commission to know that although Dr. Smirelli and Mr. McDonald had to leave, they are joining us by conference call right now. So if they want to come in, they can do that. Let's just open it up for questions. Mr. Jones?
Commissioner, welcome again.
Thank you.
First request that I have of you would be to share that presentation with us so that we have either a hard copy or a version that we can access with that data-rich, the data-rich have the data-rich presentation that you had.
Yep.
One of the things too, because when we look at some of the competing states, so that was my first request. One is a comment. When we talk about kids in poverty in other parts of Tennessee, unfortunately, there's not a homogeneous look of poverty in the state of Tennessee or any place. And what I mean by that, if we look at an Obion County or Greene County, and so much of ours, I would attribute, and I think we as a board attribute our challenges to the mobility. So if I live in Obion County or one of these rural counties, and my parent is evicted, I'm still going to the same elementary school. Versus when I'm evicted here in Memphis, I may have to move to the south part of town, I may have to move to the north part of town, but I'm going to a different school. So, so that's a challenge that we face when we know that when a child moves from school to school, in some cases they can lose up to 6 months of instruction doing that. So when we look at that, I think what would be helpful for us to see if that's the same case in North Carolina, if that's the same case in Kentucky, how are they doing that? So I think what would be helpful for us is to look at those NAEP standards across the South or even across the country, knowing that poverty doesn't look the same when you're talking about an urban area in a rural area, and how can we get those best results?
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. So first of all, we will definitely share the presentation with you. And second of all, we'll look at what data we can pull out. The NAEP data disaggregated by free and reduced price lunch doesn't get cut down then by a bunch of additional factors. So I'll see what we can pull from NAEP. And I think it's true that poverty looks different in different places. And I guess a couple of comments, though. So one is that Tennessee's results are low no matter how you look at them. And, it's not actually just our poor kids that aren't doing well compared to other states. Our non-poor kids are not doing well compared to other states. It's not just that we have an achievement gap. It's that white kids in Tennessee compared to white kids in other states are doing badly. So there's a consistency with where our results are across the board relative to other states. And that's something that I think about in my job a fair amount, that there's a consistency to the challenge and to the problem. And so I think that's important to understand. But I think your point is well taken, that obviously the challenge is just saying that a school is free and highly, 75% or more free and reduced price lunch doesn't mean that it looks exactly like another school that's 75% or more free and reduced price lunch.
Another question? Mr. Keel?
building off sort of the last point you were making that you were sort of touching on here, the state average itself is not something that we should necessarily be really enthused about anyway. And we as a commission are dealing with a lot of the schools that you're describing that would be high priority schools, but a lot of schools that aren't eligible, from either of the existing systems. And I was wondering, I didn't see all that much up there from the state level in terms of, what are we doing to improve an average school?
Mm-hmm.
We're doing a lot to improve a bottom 5% school, but what about a school that's, just kind of stuck in the middle? What strategies are there for that?
Yeah, well, I think statewide, a lot of the things that we're attempting to implement through Race to the Top, we think have enormous potential to improve results over time. So one thing is the implementation of Common Core state standards, which I think probably is something that you all will have to take into account as you think about your work. We're committed to implementing the Common Core state standards across the state over the next 2 years. We started in kindergarten, first and second grade, and we're implementing them more. But we need to make sure that kids in Tennessee are learning the same standards as kids in high-performing states in other places, and that's a really essential part of our work. That's going to be a very challenging part of our work. We're going to have to provide a lot of training, a lot of ongoing professional development and support. So I think that's a big piece right there. I think some of the work that we think is critical in human capital, providing essential feedback to teachers and to principals, making sure that we have an evaluation system that provides that feedback and that helps people learn things that they can do to improve their performance. We've had a system in Tennessee where teachers were evaluated twice every 10 years previously, and where a great many teachers just didn't have administrators coming into their classroom, observing them, and offering feedback. So this is a huge opportunity for us to systematically across the board ensure that there's a continuous improvement loop. We have to use the data in Tennessee to help drive our results. Tennessee has the best student achievement data in the country. So we have a lot of challenges in Tennessee, but we have the best student achievement data in the country. It's been collected over 2 decades. We've got longitudinal student information. We use value-added scores in a bunch of different ways. We provide them to districts in a bunch of different ways. That information is really important and relevant because value-added scores helps wash out some of the factors that can impact student learning. Instead of just measuring what was the student's absolute attainment, what was the class's absolute attainment, we're able to actually demonstrate how far did a classroom of kids advance relative to what they would be expected to advance based on past performance. That's a huge opportunity as well because for schools that fall right in the middle and that we want to get better, value-added scores help tell the story about whether they are improving at the rate we would want. And that's why I would encourage us to look at some of the reward schools that are in the top 5% for rate of growth as well as for absolute achievement, because I think that gives us the chance to see how fast schools improve and what it is that leads to those improvements. So I think those are some of the key things that we need to be looking at.
Dr. Johnson?
Commissioner, kind of along the same line, I'm looking at the total school population in Tennessee, and I think we would all agree that the majority of the jobs in the future are going to be STEM related. Then when I look at the hub school, I don't see one in West Tennessee at all. And when I look at the population in West Tennessee, that's another issue. We have a larger number of students, but there is no platform or hub school to my knowledge. And if I'm in error, please correct me. I'm wondering, what about additional funds for STEM education and for setting up these kinds of activities? You mentioned, I think, we're in the lowest quartile for college readiness. STEM education will help get us in another vein, and I'm concerned about that. Can you help?
Yeah, well, I think it's the right thing to be concerned about. And we actually, through Race to the Top, are creating STEM schools and hubs, and there's an RFP process out for regions to apply to create STEM schools and to create regional hubs. And to be honest, I don't know whether Memphis and Shelby have applications in, and there are probably people in this room who would know the answer to that question. Beyond just that, though, the challenge starts much earlier. I mean, we're 46th in fourth grade in math results. So our problems start at a young age and advance from there. And when I talk to employers, that is one of the top two things that they mention to me, math education. They say we can't find people to hire who have basic math skills, and we need to do more to make sure that people are leaving with basic math skills. And while I think STEM schools and hubs can be an important piece of that, I also think just strong, fundamental, basic math education at the elementary and middle school level is critical as well. And I think that's something we haven't done a great job with as a state. I think there are various reasons. I think our licensure program has not been conducive to having great math education. I think our curriculum has not been as strong as it needs to be, and the Common Core is going to help with that. But, you know, I hear time and again from employers, we have open jobs right now, and I can't find people who have the basic skills to hire into those positions. That's obviously on us as an education system, and it's a painful reality that we have to fix.
We envision STEM schools starting, as you say, down at the elementary grade. Then we prepare them to get up at the secondary level.
Yeah, well, we have to do a much better job of ensuring that our kids are leaving elementary school with really strong foundational math and science and technology skills.
Mr. Hart?
Gentlemen, I appreciate y'all being here and making the presentation. My concern is, are you going to walk your talk? I have the perception sometimes that Big Shelby is intimidating to the state, and we need you here. And we're going to need access to some of those resources you talked about. And it's critical for us to be successful, to be the anchor for this part of the state for secondary education to advance and achieve. And what is going to prevent y'all from achieving this other than getting a new governor that sweeps with a new broom?
Well, I think people who have worked with me so far, generally speaking, haven't left with the question of whether I'm going to walk the walk, and I intend to on this as well. We've got a couple of things that need to come together. I think that getting this waiver from the federal government helps tee up some of the work we're doing. Regardless of whether we get the waiver, we have resources to put into school improvement. I will say we've had resources before to put into school improvement grants, and this is not a new program. And there's not a lot of evidence that the resources that we put into school improvement grants have led to school improvement. So part of the challenge is not putting the resources in. Part of the challenge is having really strong plans that are worth funding. What I don't want to do is have a process where everybody that is performing at the bottom of the performance curve applies to do some variation of what they're doing right now, and we give out money, and then the results are the same. What I want is a true competitive process where people are coming forward with real innovative plans to do things different, to remake the way education is delivered in the bottom performing schools in the state. And so, first of all, we're very serious about wanting to be helpful and be a resource and be a help in this merger. I think it's critically important that this succeed. And it's hard to imagine how the state of Tennessee gets better results if Memphis and Shelby do not jointly achieve better results over time. I just don't see a path from here to there, and we need to be a part of that, and we will be a part of that. But second of all, I guess my challenge to you is I don't want to run a competitive grants process and have to give a disproportionate amount of money to cities outside of Memphis and Shelby because we don't have good plans to fund. So my challenge to you all is we want great plans to fund. the work of the two systems right now, there is a lot of good work that's happening within the two systems right now. You know, Dr. Aitken and Dr. Cash are, in their respective systems, doing some important, innovative work. I think the creation of innovation zones and the creation of school improvement plans gives everybody the chance to think even more broadly about what innovation might look like and to come forward with a really great plan. So we are going to be here. We want to be a part of this. We want to be helpful, but we really want to be helping you all with true innovative plans.
We need for you to be proactive, not reactive, which is the perception of the State Department of Education.
Yeah. No, I'm aware that that's the sort of legacy of the department, and it's certainly not the department that we're attempting to rebuild and remake.
Mr. Boyd.
I guess sort of a take on Commissioner Hart's question, which would be, as we get deep into our work in January, and we're meeting very regularly on multi times during the week with the various committees of the commission, what actual help that you offered would be available to us as in our meetings, in our committee meetings or commission meetings, as we're wrestling with various dimensions of the work of this commission?
That's a great question. I don't know that I have a pat answer for you, but I think we should have a conversation about what you all need, whether you need a point person who you can go to with immediate questions, whether you need access to data, and whether that's a big part of what you need, and we need to make sure that we are providing resources to get you all data, whether you need people to come to these meetings and to subcommittee meetings on a regular basis. But we want to step up and make this a priority.
So am I hearing that all of those may be possibilities for us?
Absolutely.
So, okay. So that, to Mr. Hart's question then, you're not going to be an absent partner in this process.
No. And I think, though, what I would say is, so here's the challenge, right? We want to be proactive, and we want to be an active partner. We also believe in local control, right? We also believe that this is your baby, right? And we want to be helpful to you. We don't want it to be perceived that the state is somehow coming in and telling people what to do. That's not our job. Our job is to be helpful. So we want to both be proactive in offering our assistance, but also make clear that we're offering our assistance and we want to be helpful to you all. And we think that the work of the Planning Commission and of the Consolidated School Board and ultimately the final school board is the local control that's going to drive where we wind up.
Thank you.
Ms. Richards?
Assuming that this commission structures our work in a way that allows for the kind of interaction which you just described, which I think most of us think.
Ms. Richards, would you mind speaking
sorry.
into the... Speak so softly.
Yeah, but I carry a mean contract.
You certainly do.
Assuming that we are able to develop the commission a process like what you have described, which is iterative and communicative as we go through this process. The reality of it is that next August we're going to get to a hard report plan that's going to come out of this group. And hopefully with input from lots of folks, the school board, the community, the state. But we're going to get down to the brass tacks of what's in the Norris legislation, which is review and comment by the state. And I am sort of the designated timekeeper for this group. So what I would like to know is, how do you envision the process working from the point where we present that report and plan to the state board?
Yeah.
Because as we understand it, for the school board to actually implement in this 2013 school year, they have to do their budget in December or January. So we would be having our report in August, and then there's about 4 months.
Yeah. We can operate on very fast turnaround. So I I don't have a sense right now, and I assume you all don't, of what the breadth of this plan will ultimately look like. But I could tell you that we will prioritize turning things around quite quickly with comment. And, my hope is that if this is an iterative process and a partnership, then our turning things around will be less laborious because we'll be responding to things that we've been talking about and in communication with. And so that's my hope for the process. But I can assure you that we will move quite quickly. We have a lot of things that we've had to do, including the waiver, that have involved hustling pretty fast across a bunch of fronts, and we will on this too.
Dr. Hammond, I'm going to get to you after I get to Miss, and I'm going to go outside this circle only with superintendents or associate superintendents, okay? Miss Stanton, you go first.
I've been through the evaluation training, and so I have some general, I hope I have a pretty good idea of what the evaluation is going to be about. I'm a past educator, I'm a retired educator, and I firmly believe that where the difference is going to be made is in the individual classroom with that individual teacher. Can you tell me some of the things you have in mind for professional development? I also firmly believe that the vast majority of teachers really want their children to learn, and they go to work every single day believing that that's what they want to happen. And if it's not happening, then we need to give these teachers the tools so that it can happen. Do y'all have plans for professional development?
Yeah.
I didn't see a lot of that in the evaluation model, other than what the principal may or may not be able to provide the teacher.
Right. I think it's a great question. So, right now we've got online portal that has access to so that teachers can see what different pieces on the rubric look like at different stages of effectiveness.
I haven't gotten that far yet in the process to see it. So I'm not familiar with it.
I would say that's a start, but that's not the end point. I think that the biggest thing that we can do in terms of professional development for teachers through the evaluation process is connect teachers to other classrooms to spend time in where teachers are demonstrating a high level of effectiveness on similar things. I think paired learning is probably the biggest lift. I think it's not going to a professional development workshop. I think it's going and spending time with a teacher who is excellent at the particular thing that we're trying to help somebody get better at. And I think it's intensive mentoring and coaching at the school level. I also think broadly, beyond the evaluation process, our professional development just needs to be much stronger generally. We spend a huge sum of money across the state in professional development. Teachers sit in, long workshops, and those workshops have...
And read the paper.
Yeah, and they have limited levels of effectiveness. It varies, from time to time and school to school and district to district. And part of the issue is that we don't track professional development systematically and measure it against results. And one of the things that we're going to do is track professional development activities, because just as I believe that teachers all want their kids to do well in school, I believe that districts all want their teachers to do well. And one of the things that we can do for districts and for principals is to make sure that they know which professional development workshops, activities, curricula, et cetera, have been used in different places and what the end results were in terms of student learning in those places, so they can make more informed decisions. Because right now, districts and principals are often just flying blind. They're going by word of mouth. They're going by what people told them may or may not work. We need to use data to drive some of that. So I think there's a whole swath of work around professional development, but it's not a quick fix. This will take time, but I think it's something that we have the means to do because we have such good student achievement data.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Commissioner Huffman, let me ask you a question too, because the most exciting part of this is the educational piece and how we deal with students, but we're also in charge of things like how to arrange the district and transportation and nutrition and all of the many aspects of it, the personnel issues that are not as exciting as the professional development. So, and we are in the process of engaging a management consultant to help us. But one thing that we may need is, as others have said, specific expertise. And I'm sure that as the State Department and going through such reform, that you might be able to help us identify expertise in an array of areas. And so would that be something that you might be willing to sit down with us and let me share the committee structure with you, the particular areas that we're going to be looking at, and not only help us identify, but perhaps help us access some expertise in areas?
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to be able to help, either if it's involved, either if it's identifying people within the state who have a particular expertise, or if it's districts or states
best
across
practices
the country that have demonstrated innovations in particular areas. We would love to try to help.
We're going to have a panel from Charlotte-Mecklenburg on the 12th, and so we'd like to, along the way, we've been doing some things early on now, but as we get started with our committee work, we'll still be assembling as a whole, and so we might, that would be a conversation I'd like to have.
Sorry, can I just say
yes,
something about Charlotte-Mecklenburg?
Yes.
Just since I now know that you all are going to spend time. I spent a day with in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, and it was fantastic. And I hope when they come that you'll ask them about two things in particular. One is their model on turnaround schools. So they've made a very concerted effort to turn around low-performing schools in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, and they have done it through a system which they'll explain better than I will, but essentially it is recruiting very high-performing principals from within the system and convincing them to leave their high-performing schools and go to a low-performing school, and allowing them to bring a certain number of staff and faculty with them to that school as part of a turnaround team. And it has been incredibly effective. It has changed results in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. The other thing I would have them, I would ask them about is their data on teacher effectiveness. They have spent a lot of time studying teacher effectiveness, and it's very interesting, some of the work that they have done, but they have data that shows the difference that having a top quintile teacher can make in a student's life. A top quintile teacher can advance student learning at such an extraordinary rate that you start to see how having more top quintile teachers can help kids catch up who are significantly behind, and they've done pioneering work there.
Great. Thank you very much. I also appreciated your pointing out that both Shelby County schools and Memphis City schools have some of the, I can't remember what you said, progress schools. The reward schools, thank you. Because we have had two outstanding presentations from both school districts, and we know that there are things here that are quite extraordinary, but our hope is just that we will keep those things, but even go further. Dr. Hamer, I'm going to allow you to ask a question back there.
Yeah.
South Carolina, Kentucky, North Carolina, Charlotte-Mecklenburg sort of situation. I would sort of suggest, I think I'm right about this, that per pupil expenditure in Tennessee corresponds to the performance in Tennessee, equally low across the states. So it'd be really interesting to hear you comment on that. And secondly, and subsequently, it's important on the per pupil expenditure issue, the first of the top dollars clip. The question is, after the work that you're going to be doing as a state agency and the first of top dollars clip no longer available, what's the game plan?
Yeah.
The second question, so that's a subpart of the first question.
Oh, dear.
Okay.
I'll have to start writing these down.
I learned this from like high school teachers. One question turns out to be 4 or 5. I apologize. And the second question is, would you say a little bit about the department's capacity to actually run schools in local districts?
Yeah. Thanks. Those are all great questions. So per pupil, broadly speaking, That's correct. Tennessee's per pupil expenditure is in the 40s. I don't know exactly where it falls, but it's near the bottom, as are the results. What I would say, though, is interestingly, we just looked at this because we get this question a fair amount when I cite Kentucky and North Carolina. Kentucky and North Carolina per pupil expenditures are higher than Tennessee, but not actually that much higher. You know, they're hundreds of dollars higher per kid, not thousands of dollars higher per kid. And so while the per pupil expenditures in Tennessee are low nationally, when I look at where we are in results and where Kentucky and North Carolina are in results and what we're spending, I have a hard time attributing a direct path, a direct correlation. You know, not to say that it's not part of the equation, because I think it is part of the equation, but I think it's not as causal as some people might think. That's my take on it. On the race to the top cliff, I think this is real. I think districts need to be planning for this. Of course, when we got race to the top, we all knew this was one-time funding. Half of the race to the top money has gone out to school districts. Half has gone to the state. The money that's gone to the state has been spent in ways and in places that I don't think we will experience much of a cliff at the state level, because we're spending most of our money on capacity building projects, on contracts for technology systems, things like that that do not require ongoing expenditures. But at the district level, I think it's real, and I think districts do need to make sure that they have a plan for what happens when the race to the top funding goes away, because there is no guarantee that the state budget is going to be in a position to significantly increase in response to that. And I don't think there was ever any intent in the race to the top plan to replace those dollars long term. But so I think that's a real thing for people to take into account. State capacity to run schools. You know, I'll let Ash take the question in a second, but I would say we're very cognizant of that, which is why, even though there are 85 schools on the priority list, we're talking about the state managing 6 schools in the 2012 and 13 school year. We want the Achievement School District work to be about excellence, not to be about running schools that look pretty much the same. That doesn't make any sense. State, quote-unquote, takeovers in other states often wind up with the same results as districts managing those schools, because you're substituting one bureaucracy for another. That is not what we want to do. We want to make sure that we are creating excellent schools. The reason that I hired Chris Barbick to be the superintendent of the Achievement School District is because he built and managed schools in Houston serving all low-income kids, and 100% of his graduates for 11 graduating classes went to a 4-year college. 100%. And he didn't come here in order to run schools or create schools that are incrementally better. You know, he came here because he believes that we can have schools serving low-income kids that get significantly different results. But we've got to build the capacity gradually over time. The capacity does not exist right now to manage dozens and dozens of schools. We don't have the capacity to manage dozens and dozens of schools across many, many districts. We need to concentrate our resources and efforts and be very cautious in how we proceed and make sure that we're creating really good schools. But do you have anything to add?
Just a couple thoughts on kind of how we're thinking about running schools. First and foremost, the Achievement School District is trying to build a super lean and nimble organization, and so we're not looking to build State Department-based staff of dozens or hundreds of people to run schools. Our hope is to keep as many of the resources and dollars in the schools themselves. One of our guiding principles as we go into this work is that we will leverage Race to the Top resources for one-time investments, whether that's leadership training, capacity building, tool development. But by the time a school is transitioning out of the Achievement School District, we're committed to that school being on a financially sustainable and viable model based on the per pupil that the district has that it would be returning to. And so the headline, hopefully down the road, should the Achievement School District be successful with its schools, will not be you need to spend 2 or 3 times more money or have $500 million from the federal government to be able to serve these schools well. It will be that if you think about allocating the resources a little bit differently, and to be fair, we have an advantage or a unique opportunity in that we're not inheriting a extremely large, already in existence organization, and we're building a team from scratch, and so we're trying to keep it as lean as possible as opposed to making significant cuts to an already existing organization. But I can tell you that our plan is to be as slow as necessary to create excellent schools and not to rush out to or to over-invest in building a large central support structure, but to be as thoughtful as we can and as diligent as we can to make sure that we're building schools that are well-resourced and return to districts in a sustainable way.
Any other members of the commission? Mr. Jones?
Thank you. Commissioner, some concern that some transition committee members had was whether the work that we would undertake over this next 18-month period of time would be fully accepted by the Shelby County Board of Education. Now, Mr. Pickler and I, we have, we've assured just in our individual capacities that it's going to be hard for the board not to accept some, if not most, of the recommendations that come out of this committee. But I would ask and encourage you to, whether it goes before the board, it goes before this committee first. If you see things, because you're going to have the ability to look at what some of the best practices are across the country almost sooner than we would be able to do, I would ask that you bring those back to this commission here, as well as the Shelby County Board. I think that would be very helpful. Also, if you could talk about the role that BEP will play, and I know this probably goes beyond the scope of this particular body, but it's still a concern that this local community will have. The role that BEP will play, particularly, or will there be any? Because when we look at Shelby County's overall capacity to pay, it's largely based upon the county as a whole. But with our having 2 systems, and we were being judged based upon the county's overall ability to pay, I think that dynamic of how the combined school system will look from a BEP standpoint, because Memphis is more of a high poverty district versus Shelby County, but once you bring them together, our BEP look to the state will change. Right. Will there be some commitment of funding that we will not suffer from that standpoint in BEP that you can provide us?
Well, the answer is I don't know, because I don't know exactly how the BEP formula will work. It makes sense that the combined systems will have a BEP formula that looks different than either of the 2 systems look individually. This is probably something I should come back to you with, and I should come back to you with I don't know whether I'll come back to you with something that is concrete information or not.
If it takes you 6 months to get back, but just think that that's something that is going to be a concern to all of us. So
absolutely, and it makes sense that you're going to want to be able to take that into consideration in planning as well.
Right, and then one other thing, with ASD largely being a proposal that was part of the Race to the Top application, is once that cliff, even from the Race to the Top is at the state level, will there not be a cliff, and how would that continue beyond the availability of Race to the Top funds?
Right. Well, the grant is a finite period of time in terms of the funding, but the Achievement School District is a creature of state law now. So it's enshrined in state law. Through this waiver, it would be a piece of this process. But I would also suggest that the waiver is a response to the fact that Congress has not been able to pass a new ESEA. It will eventually. I don't know what that will look like, and nobody does. Yeah, well, maybe not. Maybe it will. but presumably it will. And I don't know what it will look like, but the one place where I would say there is unanimity of opinion on what this will look like is that it will require states to identify assertive means by which it is going to take on the bottom 5% of schools. That seems to be a consistent theme across every proposal that I've seen. There are a bunch of federalism disputes about, how much should the federal government require the state to do broadly with schools. But even within those discussions, I have yet to see a proposal that did not say, we, the federal government, are going to require states to come forward with a plan for how they are going to aggressively turn around performance in the bottom 5% of schools. And so I view all of this work, the Achievement School District, but also the potential, the innovation zones and the use of school improvement grant funding as things that will continue into the future beyond Race to the Top.
Commissioner Huffman, thank you so much for being here, and Mr. Solar, too. It's been very informative, and most of all, thank you for the offer of ongoing engagement with us, because this is an incredibly important issue to not only Shelby County, but to the state. We were sorry that Mr. Barbick didn't get to come tonight. We're happy that you did. I'll tell you a funny thing. I saw him the other day, and he said, when I get up in the morning and think about how hard it, all the job and everything I have to do, I just think about you, and then I think that you're okay. I said, thanks a lot. But we've got a great challenge, and we really, I hope you can see, are coming together with a common goal of making this not just the best district in the state, but the best in the country. And we hope that you'll help us with that. And if we can give them a good Shelby County send-off, that'd be great.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And if I can have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, and it is adjourned.
See you next time, my friend.